What is mother hunger? We've talked about it briefly in other episodes, but I feel like the best way to describe it is to first understand, and what the mother hunger author, Kelly McDaniel, starts is by naming mother hunger, by naming what motherhood is. She goes on to describe that it might sound something like this: an ideal candidate for a self-starter, able to comfort and bond with a new vulnerable human by holding, feeding, and responding to nonverbal cues. Responsibilities include protecting this human from external threats and actively engaging in their academic, spiritual, and social development. Candidate needs equal parts tenderness and strength, grace under pressure, and healthy boundaries. This job is unpaid. She goes on to say, why would anybody sign up for this job? It's demanding, thankless, very often, and the pay is terrible. A mother's work is astounding. Isolation, financial stress, gender discrimination compound the overwhelming responsibilities that come with nurturing and protecting a newborn and guiding a child through complex stages of human development. Another friend who I've recently podcasted with talked about mothering in a way becoming a mother was not even a choice. We are just a vessel to bring a soul into this world. And I think that very often many of us don't understand some of our personality traits are actually trauma response. And I think that as a young mother, I understand that what I didn't know, I didn't know. I couldn't have parented differently, and I have to have a lot of grace for myself in those moments. So if you're wrestling with whether or not you're a good parent, or how to be the best parent, or how to feel loved, how to love, I think they're synonymous. I'm having word trouble today. But I think that when we think about parenting, so many times what comes to mind is just relationships in general, how to love effectively. And if you go by my motto, life is a gift and love is the point. So in that likeness, Mother Hunger discusses, and we'll go on to discuss more and more out of this book and more about what my theory and my thought process is. But ultimately, this book is here to help us understand how to heal that. To heal that inner ache, that inner heartache of not understanding why we do what we do and how we do what we do and why that ever even came about. It's like taking a sociology class, but you mix in ethereal and, realistic experiences. And I think that so many of us don't understand where our birth story started. So it's hard to understand how to correct it and how to do your own for your own children and how to heal any of it. I personally finished this book within a very short period of time. I'll show you too. I don't know if you can see this, but literally there's like almost every other page is bookmarked because there's so much information in here that I either want to share with you or that I want to remember so that way I can write my further thoughts in my next book. Because healing, true healing, I know that it exists. I know that I have hurdled so much. I know that you probably have. If you're listening to this, there's some part of you that probably still needs love, and probably from a mom. Lucky for you, I happen to be a Cancer with a Scorpio moon and a Cancer North Node. I'm a Cancer rising. I also happen to be a Sagittarius sun, so I have a very unique masculine and feminine note to my energy. You might even be more drawn to this if you're a man. And I know this is being hosted on Maternal, which is definitely female. But in light of one of my most recent friendships and more, they were very maternal in their chart as well, and in embodiment and the understanding of their role in this world was very almost feminine, but not feminine. And I am very masculine, but not masculine. And I think that somehow I am here created specifically for this, in this moment, in this period of time, to rise to the occasion, to be a mother figure. And I believe wholeheartedly the mother figure for men, women, and children alike. And I just can't keep fighting this urge to support. And I can't keep hiding it by doing other things. So stepping into my full maternal rising and North Node without a maternal role to show me how to do that. I'm pulling from past experiences, books, mentors, leaders, coaches, and everything that I've done that I feel like was right and that I now understand where I could have done better. A lot of this podcast is probably going to come out kind of ad lib. I didn't have a role that I really wanted to play in life other than mom, which is really weird because as a young person, I actually said that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I've done everything but that as my years have gone on. I discovered through reading this book that while I feel like I have done everything that I could possibly do to raise my children with so much love and nurturing, that there are still things that have been created that has caused a mother hunger in them, and by proxy, anxiety, avoidant, and other attachment styles that have, I guess, been showing through. And I've almost ignored it, thinking that it was somebody else's fault, a dad, other people. But I think ultimately, when I look back, I see not out of malice and not out of purpose, but accidents or mistakes or choices that made, circumstances that happened in my child's upbringing that has specifically caused some of these symptoms. And now understanding the power and weight of mom and raising one little girl and two little boys at different generations, that I have the power to step in and support you and your next steps in healing your mother hunger and really repairing whatever you might be able to repair with your own children or your future children. I feel so much tightness. I don't know if you do as well, but talking about this is hard. A lot of us don't understand that we don't talk about our trouble with our moms because it goes against our survivalist instinct. Your mom is the one that brought you into this earth, the portal, the closest thing to God, if you will, from the spirit realm to the real life 3D. She was the one that grew you, the one that fed you, nourished you, gave you those good baby feelings of love, or was supposed to. It was the one that held you for 9 months without choice, the one that birthed you, sometimes quite painfully, and brought you into a world of unknown, of uncertainty, and a whole new beginning. You already existed in the womb. You already felt your mother's love, even if it didn't always feel present, or if it was stressed, traumatized. All of those bonds were either formed, severed, or slightly broken or tweaked from just being inside your mom's stomach in her womb. And then you were brought into this world and it's cold and it's different and the smells are big and the sounds are big. And you were birthed into the family that you, I think if you believe some theories, you were brought into this world by choice, by your own choice. You chose your mother, you chose your parents. I don't know if we always choose both parents. Maybe we don't choose at all, and maybe it is fully up to our creator. But our creator is, and she chose. Sometimes she didn't choose who she was creating life with. And imagine coming into this world with a heavy heart because that wasn't her choice. When you look at astrology, there's actually people and astrologers that will tell you what each sign, what their sun sign was, their purpose for coming into this world with. I don't know if it's real, but it seems to ring true with all of my children and or with people that I've known. Capricorn, they say, brought into this world to save a family, which if you look at both of my boys and the timing of that, seems to be pretty true. So it's hard for me to not acknowledge. I think the weird thing about a lot of these books is we don't talk about astrology. We only talk about science or religion, or we think about theory, but we don't really intermix all of these together. And I think that maybe is somehow my gift to this world, is because everything that I think about, I intertwine astrology and human design and sometimes gene keys, anything that I can to make sense of why was I brought into this earth? And not for actually knowing all my purpose, but astrology does talk about that as well. Astrology does intermix a lot of human question and somewhat causation and answer And if it's not causation, at least it's correlation. And I think that so many men shy away from astrology. And if I were one conduit that could allow you to understand that as a very masculine female, I was raised by a man. My favorite man in the world was my grandfather. He was the measure of a man. My father was a good guy. He didn't get everything right, but he was a good guy deep down. And I think that by being raised by these really solid, good men, even if they aren't perfect, I got to see something and learn from them that I could communicate with men no differently than I could with a female. My maternal bonds were severed pretty early, and so sometimes I didn't have another choice. So I became very comfortable, one of the guys. And it's funny because if I had had the opportunity to really spend time learning my father and my grandfather's astrology, I think it would be fascinating. I don't even know if I can find their astrology at this point because everybody's passed away at this point. Why I interweave all of this together is because when I start to think about trauma, just the very notion that your astrology chart can show and talk about your bonds to your mom and your father. So if you just look at what moon and rising you have, many times you can detect a maternal bond break or a safety or a bond that is there and present. There are certain moons that are moon signs. Let me rephrase that. There are certain placements in the moon that can make you understand why you have this broken bond. And they talk about Sagittarius. I was a Sagittarius sun. They talk about Sagittarius as being brought into this world to actually almost like force my mom to reckon with karma. I don't know what that means because she was so young that I don't know that I can really jump on board with that, but I don't know if that's from this life or another. I don't know if that means later in life that she's going to have to face the karmic understanding of her actions and how it affected me. Maybe. But I do know that it does make some sense in hindsight. I didn't know that my Scorpio moon and my Cancer rising has everything to do with my broken mom. I now use so much of astrology and my human design to understand how to navigate even just my trauma. Had I known this at 20 years old or 18 or even younger, where I could have circumvented some of this healing process, but who knows, maybe that was everybody's at the right place at the right times. I think I'm here to share with you that if you are seeking information about your childhood, maybe some of your behaviors you don't understand, maybe it's because, and I'll give you a real world example. Both of my children were born to a loving mom who I nursed them for almost a full year. And then I also went back to work within 2 weeks of both of those children being born, sometimes circumstantial, to where I just didn't have another choice. We needed the finances, even when it caused so much separation anxiety that both of my children do exhibit separation anxiety issues as young adults. Now, I have done everything in my power to create secure, safe bonds with them, but ultimately that separation at such a young age, 12 days and 14 days old, that has created something that I don't know if it's fixable through more secure attachment bonding style. That's kind of remaining to be seen. And I know that Mother Hunger talks about how to heal this bond. And it also talks about many times really severe mom trauma. Sometimes isn't even able to be talked about until the mom has passed away. So if this starts to resonate with the understanding that your mom may not have beaten you, your mom may not have abused you in any way, but there are things that causes anxiety, depression, other bond breaks, like maybe formula versus nursing. And if you feed a child formula, but you're not feeding the child, you're not nursing the child. You may not be nursing formula from the breast, but you might be feeding your baby with so much love, with all the baby coos and the loves and the hand touching and the kisses and all the closeness that your baby needs with formula. Maybe there's a better shot at that. And I'm not in any way shaming moms that feed formula. There's plenty of moms that have issues with nursing, and I understand that. But if you have the opportunity to feed your child in that moment, that is a moment of nursing and nurturing, not feeding. We're not just putting food in the mouth. I think that's why so many times when babies are young, if you're feeding real food, you're doing the big open wide, here comes the helicopter or the airplane or whatever, and we're coming towards them with big happy faces and excitement and enjoyment. It's completely different to nurse a child when you are stressed out, angry, ticked off, in pain, and resentful. That doesn't nurse your child. That feeds your baby and also creates a very tough environment energy-wise for that child to feel nursed and loved. So if you don't know your mom was a saint, quote unquote, but you still have this anxiety, this deep-seated depression, this lacking of love, this might be it. This might be where your mom may not have known what she didn't know, wasn't taught to her, wasn't given by proxy because society told us to let your baby cry it out, or that it would be okay for them to sleep on their own at very young ages because mom and dad need their bed back. There's a lot of societal pressure to change that bond. And I firmly believe this is by design. You may not believe me, but I think that societal patriarchal norms would say that mom is not important to child, let dad feed the child, or a bottle, or a nurse, or a wet nurse, or a propping the bottle. Propping the bottle was one of the most influential things for so many because then you can get things done. Just prop the bottle. All of those things can be so societally normed. It's acceptable, but it's not truly connecting and bonding and nurturing your child. And it's not something, if the patriarchy wants you to disconnect from mom, what does that do to women? It creates a lot of lacking of capacity to nurture. When they get older, they don't understand how to connect with men, women, and mom figures. She goes on to talk about in Mother Hunger how it can become food and addictive behaviors, and drugs and alcohol, no different, relationships and love, anything that we can in order to kind of get the same feeling that we needed from mom. And as a man, I firmly believe that this is the gateway. When you don't get what you need from mom, then you're less likely to give to women in the ways that are needed, and or can become more expressive in anger, more abusive by nature because you didn't get the missing bonds that were supposed to be there at birth. And then what do you think that happens when you accidentally have a child and you aren't working through that mother hunger? It's just a cycle repeat. Then you're not as big of a lover and a giver, and you don't respect women as much because you didn't get the respect and love that you needed as a baby. And I may not have the words exactly right in your story or the emotions, because there's a range. Everybody doesn't feel exactly the same because not every situation is exactly the same. I'm a perfect example of that. My mom nursed me. She was young. She was 16 years old and raised me as the first girl granddaughter. And then, well, what I mean by that is there was another grandchild and there was a male. So I got a lot of that first nurturance and love. And yet at the same time, I have a very deep-seated mother hunger that I can't seem to understand fully because I have a lot of trauma, but I've worked through so much of it. And for the most part, I'm very, very healthy and was able to nurture and love my children. But there are things that I do exhibit that do make sense that I'm missing some parts of that mother bond. Maybe I got it for a first year, but maybe I didn't get it for my first 3 years. Maybe I suffered something in my younger days that severed that bond with my mom, even though she still nursed me. Maybe she nursed me with resentment. Maybe she didn't nurse me long enough. Maybe she nursed but pumped and used a bottle. I don't know. I doubt it. But I know that there's a very large sliding scale of what could have happened to what you might be experiencing later on in life. But the craziest thing is If you watch Mindhunter and you pay attention to how each young man was harmed, usually it comes down to the mom bond, whether mom was safe or not, was abusive or not. And many times, these cases in Mindhunter, mom was either abusive sexually, physically, emotionally, and many times they were not protective. If it wasn't from them, it was from their partner or somebody in their life that they did not protect their child from. That is recipe for potential of serial killers and rapists. And not because you're a man, but because you have more aggression towards the female, which is like the mom, the feminine, and women have a different propensity because we aren't naturally that aggressive. And not to say that women don't reoffend or abuse, they just do it in different ways. And that's what we're seeing. But there's a lot of women, this book included, that was written for women. My book will be integrating not only your astrology so that you understand where this is coming from, and it might have just been in your chart from the beginning, and it has nothing to do with whether or not your mom loves you or doesn't love you. But then also, what are the missing keys of your childhood so that way you have the opportunity to detach from your mother's behavior and understand that there was nothing wrong with you, as well as all of the varying degrees that could be happening in your adult life that is making you feel as though this is a personality disorder or a trait or feeling. These are things that come from trauma. I feel like because I'm ad-libbing, this is coming out in the wrong way, but if this makes sense to you and this is starting to pull on what you know and understand to be, plaguing your life, if you're not feeling connected to your children, or you don't feel like they're connecting to you or your wife, or you're not connecting with women on a whole because you're angry with them, or you feel like women just don't like you, or I think I see this all the time. So many men seek out sexual gratification with women, but don't want close connection with them, or don't seemingly have the capacity to do such, or want it very badly, but it seems elusive. All of these can come from a detachment from your mom. And I think that there's even more. I think that there's so much to talk here. I don't think that this job will ever be done. If you're interested in talking more about how to work through and identify some of these mother hunger pains that ache in your heart that might possibly exist, I would love to talk to you. I would love to work through this with you, and we can do it privately. And if you're open to it, I would love to start a men's group. If you're willing and open to start talking about these things with somebody that is trauma informed, I've been through a few things, a few divorces, and the understanding of men, and I just am here as a conduit to support your path. And I don't know where this is going to lead other than the fact that I'm writing a book and your information will be kept safe and secure and confidential. But in the group, I really hope to start to understand and provide support and understanding where you might need it. So if you're interested, please feel free to email me or DM me on any of my socials. I'm sure we'll leave stuff in the show notes to make sure that you can get connected with us somehow. I really do appreciate this, and if this hit home, please throw into the comments somewhere and let me know what we can do to support your path and your journey to curing and healing your mother hunger. Signing off for now. I'll see you soon.